It is Friday, July 30, 2021, and this is the FLORA Bulletin. Good morning from Malate, Manila. This is Ezekiel Nathan LAURENIO, and it's nice to talk to you. Today we'll be tackling some issues that will inform you the question that possibly you and I are asking. Are we invasive? Are we invasive species towards the world of plant life? Well, before we get to our reporters to give us the reports of the evidences, let's first define what is invasive species. Well, it's simple. It is a species that is not native towards an ecosystem, but it poses a threat as well as produces the threat towards that ecosystem. Well, we could say that us, Homo sapiens, humans, could produce changes that could pose threats as well as produce it towards plant life. Well, in the case of the plant life, we humans take up more space than any species on Earth, as well as transfer exotic plants from one place to another, ranging from recreation all the way to experimentation, either legally and possibly illegally. An example I would like to give is the case of lupin flowers. Because of pesticides as well as other human activities, such as human wildfires that possibly humans could control, well, it is declining in terms of reproduction, going down to 99%. So it means, therefore, it destroys the homes of species that are entirely dependent upon it, such as the corner blues. Population growth is also another threat towards plant life because humans need space. The more humans, the more space we need. The more space we need equals the more execution of excavation, therefore making common plants possibly executed and endangered plants. Now, since we know that we could cause harm, could we really say that we fit in the category of invasive species? Well, let's ask our correspondents so that they can provide us the evidences regarding about the flora environment. So first, here is a report about the anthropogenic effects from our correspondent. Take it to you.
Anthropogenic effects of the nitrogen cycle. Humans are overloading ecosystems with nitrogen through the use of fossil fuels and a rise of nitrogen-producing industrial and agricultural activities. While nitrogen is necessary for life, excessive amounts of it are a plague to the ecosystem. Excess nitrogen from human activities pollutes freshwater and coastal zones and may contribute to climate change. Human contributions to the nitrogen cycle began to rise at the turn of the 20th century. The usage of nitrogen fertilizer is increased by 800% between 1960 and 2000, accounting for a large portion of human nitrogen contributions to ecosystems. Another issue is that nitrogen fertilizer, which is widely used today, is applied inefficiently. As a result, approximately 60% of the nitrogen in applied fertilizer is never absorbed by plants and thus free to wash out of root zones, polluting rivers, lakes, aquifers, and coastal areas through eutrophication. Micromolecules is released into the atmosphere by the combustion of fossil fuels such as coals. As a component of the amino acid system, it aids the integration of disulfide bonds with proteins which aid in the determination of the 3D folding patterns, and thus sulfur is deposited on land in 4 ways: precipitation, direct atmospheric fallout, rock weathering, and geothermal vents. Sulfur dioxide is prevalent in the atmosphere. As rain falls through the atmosphere, sulfur is dissolved in the form of mild or weak sulfuric acid. Sulfur reaches the oceans through runoff from land, air fallout, and underground geothermal vents. Human actions have had a significant impact on the global sulfur cycle's balance. Huge amount of hydrogen cycle or hydrogen sulfide gas are released into the atmosphere when large amounts of fossil fuels, particularly when coals are burned. The phenomenon called as acid rain occurs when rain falls across this gas. Acid rain is a corrosive rain caused by precipitation passing through sulfur dioxide gas on its way to the ground, converting it to a weak sulfuric acid, which harms aquatic habitats. Acid rains harms the natural environment by decreasing the pH level of lakes, killing many of the resident species. It also harms the man-made environment caused by chemical decay of the buildings.
Thank you so much for the report. It really does show some impact about the flora environment. So now let's get to our next correspondent about epigenetics. Take it away.
Plants live in constantly changing environments that are usually unfavorable or stressful for growth and development. They face a plethora of abiotic and biotic stresses that ranges from extreme temperatures to salinity, nutritional deficiencies, pathogenic attacks, ultraviolet radiation, and chemical toxicity. Resulting to this, Plants have acquired several sophisticated regulatory mechanisms which allows them to cope with such adverse conditions. The epigenetic regulation plays a key role in the mechanisms of plant response to the environment. Epigenetics is a new type of science that is growing in popularity in scientific world. It refers to the heritable alteration in chromatin architecture that do not involve changes in underlying DNA sequence, but alter gene expression through DNA methylation or histone modifications. Studies of epigenetic in plants are of great importance. Plants are heavily dependent upon changes in gene expression in order to respond to environmental stimulus. In order to adapt themselves to the changing environments, they need constant changes at molecular level. These efficient and effective controls are provided by epigenetic regulations, which improve the survivability of plants by increasing their tolerance towards stress. Tobacco smoking, alcohol consumption, environmental pollutants has been found to affect global epigenetic regulations of transcription across various types. In view of these adverse effects of global climatic change, utilizing epigenetic differences for developing improved crop varieties is of paramount importance. Back to you, Ezekiel.
So that is our corresponding about epigenetics. Thank you very much. Now lastly, let's take a closer look about the biochemical cycle from our last correspondent. Take it away.
Biochemical cycles of nitrogen and sulfur. The nitrogen cycle is a crucially important component for all life. It's an important part of many cells and processes such as amino acids, proteins, and even our DNA. It is also needed to make chlorophyll in plants, which is used in photosynthesis to make their food. The sulfur cycle is important for the functioning of proteins and enzymes in plants and in animals that depend upon plants for sulfur. Plants absorb sulfur when it is dissolved in water. Though we tend to cause fractures in these cycles, we are also the ones responsible to regulate these cycles properly. These cycles not only benefit us humans, but also other animals and plants around us, which is why these two biochemical cycles are important. Back to you, Ezekiel.
So it boils down to the same question. Are we invasive? Truly, I believe we are not considered invasive because although we still provide the harm towards our environments, we use that term so that we could define our faults. We could define our actions that we have made as a ripple effect from a human interaction towards an animal invasion due to one human interaction. So that is it. Thank you for watching the FLORA Bulletin. This is Ezekiel LAURENIO, and yes, have an amazing morning.